Former UFC World Champion Israel Adesanya has claimed that he hid a major injury in the recent fight against Dricus du Plessis. Martial arts legends as well as die-hard fans observed after the first round of the fight, Izzy was not 100%. For most of this fight, he remained on his back foot, and DDP was skilled enough to leverage this. After recovering from the fight, Israel has shown his discontentment with his recent performance, as he now wants to bring back the old ruthless fighter in him. He was surprised to see how dominating Dricus was at the end of the fight. Izzy expressed his frustration as,
and I felt like I got to showcase a lot more of, who I am rather than just fighting injured and not really showcasing who I am. So yeah.
The last stylebender hasn't disclosed much about the cause of his defeat, but he is sure that DDP will pay more credit on his name and the other two kings of Africa. Izzy squashed all the bad blood of the fight and proposed that he and the South African fighter could be friends of each other in the future, but added some conditions. I don't think DDP is a bad person. He has the fire and the torch now to inspire the people. We need unity, especially for the continent of Africa. I don't see us fighting each other outside the cage. Israel also mentioned that there are some influential people in the UFC who want the African fighters to have bad blood with each other so that they can leverage it financially. A week after this hard-fought battle, Israel admitted that other than a single part of his body, he had the best shape of his life, and he withstanded Dricus's devastating blows very easily. One of Israel's former rivals, Alex Pereira, figured out the cause of his upset defeat. He dropped the bomb about Israel's injury when he analyzed the fight on his official YouTube channel. Alex Potan Pereira said, "Of course I don't know how Adesanya was. When we are there, we don't talk about injuries, don't talk about problems. We are there. We want to fight, want to win. No excuses. Maybe Adesanya had an injury." Poatan argued that Adesanya was competing without his usual display of lower limbs. It felt like Izzy was dealing with an injury in his right leg. That's why Israel acted more like a boxer and relied on his punches against Dricus du Plessis. Alex said further, "You could see he kicked very little. I saw that the inside kick of Adesanya is very good. Not everyone can do that, but he can do it very well. It was a good weapon, and he didn't continue doing that inside kick. Even Dricus said it bothered him. It also bothered me when we fought." Alex sees that an injury is the only thing that stopped Israel from unleashing his maximum potential. He also figured out that after the third round, Israel was reluctant to launch a big kick or a proper combination on Dricus. Mr. Pereira concluded, "He didn't continue to do it. I've said it before for the people who asked me. He didn't continue to do it. When he is only throwing hands, I think it's easier for the opponent to protect themselves or to get out. It was more boxing there, so it was easier for du Plessis." And when Israel heard about these shocking revelations, he came on to social media and wondered about Pereira's for his excellent research and the knowledge of combat sports. The style bender wrote on X, "It's weird how, well, this guy knows me. It's like we've spent hours studying each other's moves and fought multiple times or some. I mean that." In the past, Pereira predicted that Israel would easily win over Dricus, and when the results came opposite from his expectation, Pereira started arguing that the Nigeria-born fighter suffered an injury that prevented him from using greatest weapon. Alex Pereira was keen before the fight that Israel would easily dismantle his South African opponent and labeled the fight as an easy work for. Pereira boldly chose Israel over Dricus and said in a question-answer session, "Well, I don't want to predict too much of the fight. I mean, one can never know, but I do not see Israel Adesanya losing this fight." And when the fight turned out exactly the opposite to the expectation, Pereira also mentioned about his possible comeback to the 185-pound division to have a match against the freshly crowned South African. He said that he would only take this step if he could have a title shot against Dricus. The Brazilian star added, "In fighting, anything can happen. You lose or win. I think it's a good fight for me. Me and Dricus, I see the fighting style. I would do a completely different fight than Israel did. Of course, it's what I imagined, but that can all change. I'm sure Israel imagined something else and it was different, but I would train, focus on a fight like this to do my best, and leave with a win." Despite the fact that Israel Adesanya came back in the octagon after a long layoff and he lost, he was compensated better than his opponent. Despite losing to Dricus du Plessis in a thrilling UFC 305 main event, Israel Adesanya reportedly earned more than double in terms of money. The bout, which took place at the RAC Arena in Perth, was fully packed with all fans cheering for Israel. Here, the world saw du Plessis successfully defend his UFC middleweight championship by forcing Adesanya to tap out in the fourth round. According to reports from the Sportster, Adesanya, a former two-time middleweight champion, was guaranteed $750,000 for the fight, while du Plessis got $500,000. With additional earnings from the pay-per-view, both fighters are expected to clear seven figures, though Adesanya's share of the the revenue is projected to be much higher due to his status and past achievements in the sport. UFC World also concluded that Israel's performance was stunted by his physical well-being. Most of them think that Dricus turned out to be more resilient and had a more dynamic approach in the game. On the other hand, Izzy was completely off-colored. MMA trainer and analyst Tim Wesh had a unique perspective to this fight. Although he appreciated the victor, he had sympathy for his favorite fighter on the decline in the UFC.
I'm happy for Dricus. Happy for Dricus. He gets to continue his reign, and kind of sad for Izzy because I don't want to see him.
Another major star who is disappointed by the result of Izzy versus DDP is Robert Whittaker. Robert also placed his bet on Israel's victory before the match and never expected that Israel would end in a stoppage in the 4th round. Robert Whittaker passed some comments in a recent interview to Submission Radio where he voiced his concerns for the Kiwi fighter's fitness and recent form. "I thought Adesanya looked spectacular at first. This is probably the best version we saw of him. He was very effective, he looked in his groove, and he was landing big shots. But man, DDP is one of those guys that honestly, if you don't kill him, he's going to win the fight." Joe Rogan streamed this whole fight live on his YouTube channel and looked crazy when Israel lost. He also never dreamed of Izzy being rear choked like this. The UFC presenter's immediate reaction after Izzy's upset loss was,
"Dricus is a f***ing animal,
That's
dude.
a tough
He's a f***ing animal."
That's a
I was saying that those punches, even though he's exhausted, you can't be in those exchanges. You're going to get clipped. If you get clipped, you're in real trouble. He got hit with those big right hands, man. He got rocked with those right hands.
Rogan's perspective on this fight was completely different. He thinks that Izzy was completely gassed out instead of being injured. He supported this argument by analyzing Izzy's previous fights and said, "Dricus rocked Adesanya. Whenever you see these exchanges and these punches come in Izzy's way, anything can happen. And whenever you are tired and are not moving as good as the first few rounds, it happens." Before the fight, Israel promised his fans that he will kill Dricus, and after that, he will go to Nigeria for the celebrations. And after this unsuccessful night out, Israel has opted to complete his second promise to the fans and flew to Nigeria a couple of days after his fight. He was spotted in Lagos, where he was crowded by hundreds of fans who paid their homage to the national hero.
Oh my God. Please. What else?
I think I said that's me. Okay, take us to the first check. We'll check out now.
Even though coming out of a defeat, Izzy was treated like a true champion in his country of origin. He extended his visit and met with Nigeria's emerging MMA star, Sodiq Yusuf, who is popularly known as Super Sodiq across the MMA community. Once again, he was crowded by thousands of his countrymen. MMA fans had very high expectations from Israel in this fight. The fight has divided the continent of Africa into two groups. There was a big debate about who was more African in Israel and Dricus. Just like the fight, its buildup was very tense and dominated by the South African. Their encounter was titled "The Battle for Africa," based on the ethnic slurs and other derogatory terms their fighters exchanged with each other. It was evident from day one that Israel would be the aggressor in this fight, regardless of any consequences. He was wounded by a lot of things Dricus said and was taking them personally. Dricus also played the bad cop in a very good way and was taunted on every occasion.
Saying that I
Bro,
made it
shut
about
the f up. You don't even know anything about my story. You have no idea who the f I
I care
am.
about your story. I don't care about your story.
The last stylebender got agitated at the final presser by DDP's stinging remarks on his African origin. Dricus refused to consider him a true African based on his permanent residence in New Zealand. Israel took it as disrespect to the struggles made by his parents and him to secure a better future and shouted, "Don't you speak my story if you don't know about it. I will show you on Sunday who you are. So right now, shut the f up." Dricus's attitude towards Israel and other UFC fighters of African origin was bad, and he would pass offensive comments at every press session just like he did against Sean Strickland. Izzy was also not short on words and announced openly that he would drag du Plessis throughout South Africa after his win. Izzy added, "You'll see. You sound like a pig. You said that you have the belt to prove that you are great. I was great without the belt. I was great before the belt, and I'll be great after this belt." Throughout the buildup of this fight, Dricus acted like the bad cop and kept adding fuel to the hype of their fight. He ridiculed Izzy for his performance against Sean Strickland and how he dominated Strickland. But as the fight finished, Dricus acted completely differently. He appreciated the Kiwi fighter and apologized to his parents for his earlier misbehavior. The match has ended, but left some scars in the mind of Adesanya. He accepted Dricus as an African African champion, but at the same time, demanded him to show more respect for him and the other African fighters like Francis Ngannou and Kamaru Usman.
Dricus is an African champion, but, you know, the three kings will reign supreme. That era right there was what set this off for people like him, and he's going to inspire another generation of African fighters as well. So congrats to him tonight.
Moreover, Israel Adesanya concluded the fight by saying that he's not leaving the sport now. He is going back to his gym and will have a strong comeback. He will grab the title very soon.
When I'm in South Africa, I'll tap in with him. But I said, look, we can hang out, but just so you know, when we have to fight again, I'm going to kill you. He's like, I'm going to kill you too. So yeah, the respect is always there. And Dricus is an African champion, but, you know, the three kings will reign supreme.
So what are your thoughts on this fight? Would you like to see a strong comeback by Izzy? Was he really injured, or was it just crying over the spilled milk? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. It helps a lot.